Hey everybody, Tom from The Good Dog, and we are embarking officially on the e-collar portion of our how-to program. So we're going to start at the very beginning to make sure everybody's got all of the bases covered, and that means that we're going to start with fitting the collar, making sure we're getting good contact, then showing you how we get the perception level, then working towards getting the motivational level. And if all goes well, then we're going to move on to teaching the initial phase of place command with e-collar. So if you haven't watched all the prong collar stuff leading up to it, you're missing out, and you're missing out on the foundation that helps support all of this work we're going to do now. That said, let's get this sucker all fitted up, and let's get Ernie, by the way, Ernie who we're working with, let's get Ernie all set up. We've got TGD, you can focus down if you want. We've got a TGD Ultimate Slip collar on him, and that's connected to the TGD Ultimate Leash Camo. And you see the prong collar hanging there because I'm going to put that on him momentarily. But first I'm going to put the e-collar on because, focus up please, because we're going to do what we call an e-collar sandwich. E-collar sandwich means that we're going to have the flat buckle collar or the slip collar, which is what you see right there at the bottom. In between that, we're going to have the e-collar, and above that, we're going to have the prong collar, hence the e-collar sandwich. Corny as it might be, but it's a good way to help remember what you're trying to, or how you're trying to set up your dog's gear. So we've got this already set up with the slip collar, and it's already attached to the leash, so we can't go anywhere. So now we've got this, which is an e-collar Technologies Mini Educator. We've also got a bungee and quick snap attached to it, and we've already fitted it. So we're already a couple steps ahead of the game. This stuff is fairly easy to do. What we're looking for, if you want to think about e-collar fit, it's a pretty straightforward approach. What you're looking for is solid, consistent contact, and that if you move the receiver box, the dog's neck skin moves with the receiver box. If the receiver moves independent of your dog's neck or neck skin, then that's a bad sign. That means most likely you don't have good contact. And it's critical, it's imperative, it's of the utmost importance that you're getting the best possible contact as consistently as possible as you can, because we're going to be working with very specific, very, how do I put this? Very consistent, but also very low levels. And we want to make sure that all the levels are being received by the dog accurately and that we can control them exactly how we want. So if this makes sense, if there's any gap in the contact being right on the money, then what we think is a good level might not be a good level, might be too high, and then your dog, it seems normal, but then your dog moves its neck a certain way and the contact becomes too intense or too low, whatever it might be. So it's imperative, what I'm trying to get to is that the contact as a foundational point of teaching e-collar training properly is right on the money. So that said, let's see if we can't get this thing on this guy. What I like to do is have the light, if you see, it's blinking green, which means it's fully charged and means it's on. I like to have that facing, if I was the dog, out like this. That means you can easily look down at your dog if you're ever having a problem with the e-collar and see, is it on? Did I make the easy mistake of not turning it on, which happens to everybody? Okay, cool, it's on. So that's not a problem. So maybe I just need to re-nestle it and make sure that I'm getting good contact. So these are just little easy kind of tips that we utilize to make sure that we get the job done and that we make it easy on ourselves and easy on the dogs. So with all of that said, I'm now going to apply this to Ernie. And one more thing before I move to that point is that we're not looking for the e-collar receiver box to be right here, right under the neck. What we're looking for is a little offset where it's going to be right on the muscle for the best contact, or on this side for the best contact. You can move it a little bit up, a little bit down, but mainly what you're looking for is like about right here or about right here. You don't want right here. Not only is it uncomfortable, but it's hard to get consistent contact, okay? So that all said, that was a lot. Let's see how we do with this guy. So bring it around, got this nice easy snap. And I'm telling you guys, if you want an easy situation with your dog and the e-collar, these snap buckles, this is from e-collar Technologies, right? These quick, easy snaps with a bungee cord are so nice to have. And it makes, because I'm just going to jump into the frame real quick. It makes it super easy for you to follow through and put your tools on your dogs, because what happens oftentimes, being humans, human nature is, it's a pain in the butt. Oh, it's too hard. Oh, it's challenging. Oh, it takes too much time. Everything you do that makes it easier to follow through will make it easier to follow through and do a good job. So having a bungee cord that's going to help you get good contact consistently, and having a quick snap or quick release is also going to help you feel inspired to put your e-collar on your dog and not be like, oh, it's so difficult, such a pain in the rear. This is very easy. You saw me put it on. I'll take it off and put it on again. It's that easy, right? And once again, the bungee allows it to breathe. So the bungee, get out of there. Stop being such a camera hog. So the bungee allows for, get out of here. The bungee allows for, if your dog happens to move in a certain way where it puts a lot of extra tension, right? Turns a certain way, puts a lot of extra tension on the collar, that keeps the collar from becoming too snug. Or if your dog happens to move in a direction that causes the tension on the collar to become less, then it absorbs some of that and helps to keep the collar in as best as possible, the most consistent fit. So that's why we like it. It's both comfortable, but it's also practical as far as maintaining good contact for your dog. And once again, it's easy and quick. And I know, knowing all of you guys, that easy and quick will help you make sure that you put the tool on, rather than like, well, I put him outside and I didn't put it on because it was too much trouble or what. If it's this quick, there's very little excuses, very few excuses, I should say, that you could leverage that are worthy of getting out of this. So let me get him back up. Let's go, bud. Okay, bring you around. Okay, sit. All right, so now I'm going to put this on. It's going to be right here, just a little bit above the slip collar. And then if you can see, I don't know, you want to step over here? Maybe you can see where it's at. For me, this is a little bit high to the side, so I'm going to move it just down a little bit more that way. And then I'm going to nestle it in like this. And what I do when I'm doing the nestling is basically I'm pulling the fur up and then wiggling, pulling the fur down and wiggling, pulling the fur up and wiggling. Now, if you have consistent problems with your dog getting contact, then what I'd recommend is getting, well, first, trying the longer contact points that actually come in the box with your remote and your receiver, or going for thick fur contact points, which are another step up, which help for a lot of dogs, or using the wings, which are very popular, which work really well for a lot of dogs. Or if you've got that really problem dog with thick fur, then splitting the fur, which is basically creating a seam of fur where you split it and it creates a little seam of skin right down the middle, and you place the e-collar prongs or the e-collar contact points right there, you hold them on, and then you snug up the collar, and that works pretty much no matter what. Takes a little more time, but it works really well. So Now we've got the beginnings of our e-collar sandwich. Once again, I'm going to bring this down just a little bit because it's just a little too high. The cool thing about this, you see this bungee cord, is that it gives me room to work, but yet it snugs right up. Okay, so I'm going to cross my fingers that that's good contact. Now I'm going to take my prong collar and I'm going to bring this up and put this at the very tip top. Thus our e-collar sandwich, right? And he's got some kind of a, what is this? A flea collar. Flea collar. People use flea collar still? Okay, so he's got a lot of gear. Get rid of the flea collar, and then you've got these 3 devices. And so we've got slip, e-collar, 2.25 Hermspringer prong. And I like the 2.25 for finished product dogs. Sometimes I'll use 3.0 for dogs for doing certain training, but for most of these guys, I want to use the 2.25 because it's going to take up less real estate on their neck and it's going to be much easier to fit a prong collar, an e-collar, and a flat without it looking like a giant, you know, like neck piece that he's got to be wearing. So now I'm going to adjust this. Hang in there, bud. There we go. All right. So I think we're pretty good. And this is also the backup on our leash right here is attached, as you see, to the slip. So no matter what, we can't lose our dog. So this creates a very, like, even though it looks complex, it creates a very safe situation that if the prong collar should pop off, which does happen, that we don't lose our dog because he's connected from here and the leash. Well, this is the same thing, from the leash to the slip collar. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll give you a quick demo. Whoa, look, hey, his prong collar pops off. He's rolling around and doing something wacky. Oh no, we're gonna lose our dog. Nope, he's still here. He's not going anywhere. That's why we recommend a backup. Even if you don't use our leash, use some kind of a backup, whether it's a carabiner or some other attachment, use some kind of a backup because prong collars can pop off. Okay, now let's see if I can get this back on. Okay, there we go. Sorry, bud. All right, so now we want to see about getting contact, or not getting contact, but getting what I call his perception level. If I'm out of breath, it's because I've been kneeling down for a long time. Okay, so take it easy. So I'm going to bring him around. Sit right here, bud, so we can all see what's cooking with you. Sit. There you go. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at a low level, and I'm going to start tapping. And what we're looking for is a perception level. Some people say working level, but I consider it 2 different things. So perception level is the level he first feels it. Then motivational level is the level that he actually cares about enough in each specific context or each specific training exercise. He's motivated to actually work with that level. So he might feel it at 4, but he's not motivated at 4. It might take an 8, 9, 10, 12, 15, 20 to be motivated, but he feels it at 4. So they're very different things. So let's see what we get. I'm going to do some tap, tap, taps. Now that's from the sound. He can hear the little button click. You should see some kind of different head orientation when he gets there. Right here, bud. No, no, no. Stay right up there. So a little bit of a different orientation. I'm going to double check this receiver and make sure he's really good at getting good contact, because here's another important tip. If you guys find yourselves working with your dog and the levels, especially if you're using a mini educator, let me give you some parameters. If you're using a mini educator, most dogs are going to feel it between, most, on average, between like 5 and 8, honestly. If you're having to go up to 20 or above, you probably have a contact issue, right? Now, there are some dogs that will feel it at a 2 or a 3, but they're exceptionally rare. So most of the time, think between 4, 5, and like 8 is going to be the level that the dog's going to feel. So I'm at 10, so I'm going to come down a little bit, and I'm going to see if he notices this at 6. Right there, bud. I'm going to let him relax. Dialing up. Do you see that? So that's the sign that I was looking for. Nice work, bud. So you guys will have to watch very carefully, because what happened was that was 7, just like I told you, between 5 and 8. So 7, he's right on the money. When I tapped the button at 5, and I think even at 6, what we got was ears going back because he hears the click of the button. And he's like, bink, bink. But then when I rolled up to 7, he went, you saw a different physical motion, which if you're watching in a very sensitive fashion, you'll notice that that's a different physiological reaction than just the ears going back because I heard something. That's when you'll notice, oh, he actually felt something. So sometimes, let me give you a little demo. Sometimes what you'll get is tap, 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 right? Tap, tap, tap. What was it? So those are the things that you will typically see. And sometimes, okay, now let me get into the more challenging things. Sometimes you'll get tap, 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 which is a little bit of what he did. It was very subtle. And then at the worst case scenario for your challenge will be tap, 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 and that's it. But if you watch carefully, which is why I always stand on the side where I can watch the dog's receiver on their neck, if I go tap, 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 and the dog doesn't move, but I'm watching the receiver, and I see the neck go, I go, ah. You're feeling it, you're just not giving me any indication. So even though this might seem like I'm being a bit overly detailed, these are critical aspects of working with e-collar training and doing e-collar training with a dog that will either help you problem solve and get to the promised land and make sure you do things right, or could absolutely be problematic if you don't think your dog's feeling it and you keep dialing up, and yet your dog is like, their neck is moving, but you're like, ah, he's not responding. So that's why I'm trying to give you multiple ways of observing your dog actually perceiving the level. And now we have to get into motivational level. So we're at 7, but that's a great place to start. So why not start at 7? Because we can always roll up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with place command. We've already done it with Prong, so he's super familiar. He knows the whole concept. He knows the marker system. He knows what we're looking for. He's got a pretty darn good feel for it. But now we're adding a different sensation. We're adding the e-collar. So that becomes a distraction of its own. It becomes a novelty of its own. It becomes something new. And so just because your dog knows it with food or with Prong, don't assume as soon as you put e-collar work into the mix that your dog is going to know it. And if they don't, then that means that they're blowing you off or disregarding or being stubborn or something like that. Remember, it's a novel sensation, so you want to make sure that you give your dog time to get acclimated to that sensation before you start thinking, oh, he's just blowing me off. Because most likely he's just like, what the hell is that? So let's see if we can't work through that. It's going to be a very simple process, really simple, and that's going to be, I'm going to walk him up. And I've already done the walk up, pause, and then walk him on. And then I've done the walk up and not pause and walk him on. And so I'm just going to start with walking him straight up without pausing because we've already done that work on Prong. So he's already grounded in that foundation of what we need. So now we're going to start a little bit ahead. I'm not going to move super fast. If you watch everything I do, it's going to be most likely at a nice kind of cool pace to where if I'm to where I'm not moving so fast that it makes it hard for the dog to process or distracting for the dog to deal with. And I want to be able to just watch the dog and work with him. And if going too slow makes him too sleepy, then I'll speed it up. If going too fast, even if I think I'm going slow enough, makes it too hard, I'll slow it down even more. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. So let's see if we can do some e-collar place. And this, once again, is escape training, phase 1, right? Escape training means when I say place, I'm going to say, and I know we have to cut out in just a second, go to the next clip, but here's the deal. I'm going to say place, simultaneously I'm going to press the button. I'm going to move my body towards place. I'm going to guide the dog onto the mat. As soon as he's on the mat and in the middle, I'm going to come off the button, and simultaneously I'm going to say good, and I'm going to stop, which are 3 different pieces of information telling the dog that's where I want you. Pressure comes off, verbal marker says good, body stops moving. And, okay, let me add a 4th, which would be leash pressure if the dog needs it. And if the dog needs it to be ushered on, you shouldn't need much, but if you do, a tiny bit. But if you also need a little bit of leash pressure to stop the dog from moving forward, then as soon as he's in the right spot, then that leash pressure should go away. So think about it that way. All of those pieces of information should help guide your dog onto it, and then help let your dog know, hey, you did the right thing, cool. And let's move on to the next rep. Let's see what we get.